these women, they have acne and they have weight retention, they're puffy and swollen, and they think, oh, I need to lose weight, so I'm going to do Anavar. Do not do it. If you're dealing with these things, you need to correct those issues first. Welcome everyone to part 4 of the hormone series. So today's video, let's go over some of the symptoms of high and low androgens, DHEA, and testosterone, and some of the causes. I'm also going to go into a little more in depth into androgens, because when you're talking like with your standard physicians, general practitioners and stuff, they don't test for this stuff. To my knowledge, I don't think there's very accurate blood work that can test for these things anyways. There's other key things that we can look at to maybe give us some indication, but ultimately, not a lot is talked about when it comes to androgens, and especially with the rise of things like SARMs, so selected androgen response modulators. I want to go a little more in depth on that, but we'll start with, these are kind of grouped together because there's a lot of overlapping. And the reason being is because if you refer back to the physiology, the DHEA is going to feed into all of these. So when we're looking at symptoms of high, like all three of these is what we'll say. So you could essentially looking at anger. And a lot of people, like, they'll correlate steroids with like roid rage and stuff. And it's not per se the steroid and testosterone that is creating that rage, but it's what's happening with that testosterone, or what other systems are being affected, whether it's the adrenals, high levels of cortisol, liver, low dopamine, all that kind of stuff. But usually you can associate high levels of these with anger, hair loss, which I will get much more into, as well as acne. In females, you can... there might be a symptom of irregular or lost cycles, unwanted hair, so facial hair in women, body hair also in women, weight loss resistance, because these high levels can lead to inflammation. They can lead to PCOS, or PCOS could be causing the high symptom. Chronic fatigue, puffy, should say puffy, not puff, puffy and swollen look, and cognitive decline. There's a reason steroid abusers are kind of dumb. I'm just going to be totally transparent there. It ages the brain. It can really age the brain and create that cognitive decline. So now, the symptoms of low of these hormones, once again, can also be chronic fatigue, especially when you're talking DHEA, muscle loss and muscle weakness, low libido and sex drive, mood swings, anxiety and depression, brain fog, poor cognitive function, bone loss, lack of motivation, and irregular lost cycles in women. So a lot of these symptoms, you see, yes, are overlapping. And so this is why it is crucial to get your labs done, whether that be blood work or a Dutch test, which I will get more into. You can check your total testosterone, your free testosterone. You can check your DHEA and blood work. Androgens is very ineffective with blood work. I want to do a little side tangent here. If you get your DHEA checked and it is low, that does not mean you are a candidate to supplement DHEA. That is why it's so important to check your androgens, because you could have low DHEA but high androgens. So if you take DHEA and you're experiencing things like irregular lost cycles or chronic fatigue, and your DHEA comes back low, and your doctor goes, oh, well, you're low DHEA, that would explain that, so let's give you some DHEA. Well, if your androgens are high, you can give yourself all of these symptoms in the high, especially PCOS if you're a female. So you want to run a Dutch test to make sure you are a safe candidate to supplement something like DHEA. And it's the same with like testosterone. If you come back with low testosterone, that doesn't mean you totally need to be on testosterone replacement therapy. Yes, when you get over the age of like 40, There's just a natural decline in things like testosterone, age-related decrease, and then you might be a candidate, but you still want to look at everything else. Look at all the other labs, look at your lifestyle, look at your nutrition, look at your training, look at your sleep, right? All this stuff plays a role. Now that I just said that, like I obviously don't have sleep in here for cause of low, but that is huge. Sleep is a very big one. Let's add that in. Can't believe I forgot that. So, but we're looking at high. So DHEA, androgen, testosterone supplements. So DHEA supplement, SARMs here, Anavar, things like that, testosterone replacement therapy, or obviously high dosage that is putting you to super physiological levels. Chronic stress, that can cause you something like your DHEA to either go high or low. Most commonly, it's going to cause it to go low because remember, it is produced by the adrenals. So if you are constantly placing cortisol, like the responsibility of secretion of cortisol in the adrenals, you're not going to be making a lot of DHEA. But there are some individuals through genetic things and whatnot that the chronic stress and inflammation can cause that DHEA to rise. So you have to be wary of that. Chronic overtraining can really increase androgens, especially in females. There is a ridiculously high number of women who have, we'll say, contracted PCOS because of chronic overtraining, because it led to excess androgens, which eventually created that polycystic ovarian syndrome. So this is why training is so important, that you are not overdoing it, okay? That chronic training is also going to lead to chronic stress and create nutrient deficiencies and take away substrate from building hormones like we've previously discussed. Inflammation, as mentioned, pituitary issues. So there could be genetic things. You could have just a high luteinizing in a male. You could have a high luteinizing response. So you're telling the gonads to make a lot of testosterone, for example. Things like that could lead to high levels of this. Whereas when you're talking pituitary issues with low, you can talk about like lack of production of something like the luteinizing hormone. Benign tumors. I know someone personally who has a benign tumor on his pituitary, and he needs to supplement testosterone and growth hormone. And then PCOS can cause, it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg, but it can cause or was caused by high androgens and DHEA and testosterone. And DHT blockers can cause high levels of these because instead of feeding into that, you're actually keeping it there, causing higher levels, which I will get into DHT when we talk about androgens. Low, as mentioned, chronic stress and chronic overtraining. You're just burning through substrate. You do not have the necessary substrate to produce these hormones. You got that pregnenolone steal going on. So you're just not feeding into these hormones. Obesity, because you can over-aromatize. So you could take all your DHEA, your androgen, your testosterone, or all your androgen and your testosterone, and be really aromatizing them into estrogen. And then that's going to cause low levels of those. You're just draining them too fast. You could simplify. I already spoken about pituitary issues, low fat, lack of nutrients, as mentioned, low levels of cholesterol. You just don't have the substrates to build hormones. And then lack of nutrients. You can look at something like zinc. We know zinc is very important when it comes to building testosterone, for example. So things like that, boron even, yes, that is found in food. Just overall lack of nutrients. Medications, painkillers, spironolactone, proton pump inhibitors because of what they're going to do for lack of nutrients, because you're suppressing stomach acids, so you're not getting nutrients out of your food. Disrupting methylation. There's lots of medications that can really disrupt your hormone symphony. And then sleep, as we mentioned, we know that poor sleep will result in a reduction in testosterone. How much, it depends. And it's also like one night of bad sleep probably isn't going to cause a huge effect. But multiple nights of bad sleep, chronic bad sleep, you're definitely going to have probably suppressed testosterone and high levels of estrogen, because you're also talking insulin resistance. So once again, you're going to over-aromatize. So that's like some of the causes of how you can have high or low in these hormones. But as mentioned, I'm going to go over androgens now because they're not talked about enough, and I'll explain a tiny bit of physiology with androgens and how they can impact your hormonal symphony. Okay, so going back to the physiology of hormones, we know we have DHEA is going to feed into androstenedione. That is, we'll say, the precursor to your etocanolone and your androsterone, okay? I'll explain these a little further. So you have reductase pathways. So you have your 5-alpha and your 5-beta. Now, it's the word alpha and beta. Alpha, we know, I don't know, the leader, whatever, beta, not. Excuse me. Alpha means you're more androgenic. So your androsterone is more androgenic. So you're going to get the more muscle building, hair growth, things like that, muscle retention effects if you are more alpha preference. If you are more beta preference, you're not going to have as much of those effects. But so I want to start with etocanolone. And the reason being is because why you might favor 5-beta reductase is because there's like genetic traits, there's lifestyle, sleep, nutrition, all those things along that nature that could cause this. Genetics is a really big one. Genetics can really cause this. And so if you are more beta preference and you are supplementing things like DHEA, for example, or you just have high DHEA for reasons mentioned, and your beta preference and you're feeding more to etocanolone, what those high levels can cause is a lot of inflammation and autoimmune, because this is responsible for like the immune system. Now, low levels are not necessarily going to suppress your immune system, but high levels can create an overactive immune system leading to something like an autoimmune disease. If you look at the research, they are heavily linked to high levels of etocanolone to an autoimmune disease. So that's where we want to make sure that this is balanced when we're talking general population. Obviously, with performance athletes and bodybuilders and such, we obviously want to be favoring 5-alpha within reason, not to create dysfunction. And so when we have low levels of etocanolone, that's because we are probably favoring alpha. So we are pushing everything this way from whichever standpoint, genetics, whichever. So when we're talking androsterone, as mentioned, especially in women, androsterone is going to be more responsible, I shouldn't say more responsible, just better for building muscle and metabolism than testosterone is in women. So this is why SARMs are becoming a really big thing for women rather than testosterone itself. But the high levels refer to your DHEA test and androgen high symptoms, because that's what you're going to experience. But what you're going to see a lot and mainly is polycystic ovarian syndrome, that puffy and swollen look, acne, and hair loss, okay? So this is where I'm going to comment on DHT. So DHT is the more potent form of testosterone. It is 3 times more potent than testosterone. And we can link that, it's correlated with hair loss. So this is why mainly women, or men too, I suppose, go on DHT blockers if they are experiencing hair loss. And that's because this androsterone it will feed into that DHT. And I should also say too, refer to high symptoms of estrogen as well, because you could be really aromatized, like you can have those high androgens still and really be aromatizing them into estrone. Now, I'll use like a little quote unquote case study. I recently had a consult with somebody who was taking things like saw palmetto and stinging nettle, because these can lower your androgens. It will cause them to feed into estrogen, but you don't always want that. This is why a Dutch test is so important. A Dutch test is going to tell you exactly what's going on. It's going to tell you your levels of your etocanolone. It's going to tell you your androsterone. It's going to tell you your DHT. It's going to tell you what pathway you are favoring, whether that is 5-alpha or 5-beta. So if you are somebody who has, who has any of these symptoms, now, if you're anybody, symptoms or not, that wants to partake in performance-enhancing drug supplementation and or DHEA, do a Dutch test. Do a Dutch test, okay? I am a provider of Dutch tests. You can contact me and I can set you up. And I also do Dutch consultations and work with any individual, whatever the Dutch test result comes back, in solving any particular issue that is standing out. Because this is the only way you're going to know this, and this is what's going to save you. The amount of women that have given themselves polycystic ovarian syndrome from doing something like Anavar is outstanding. Like, you'll have these women, they have acne and they have weight retention, they're puffy and swollen, and they think, oh, I need to lose weight, so I'm going to do Anavar. Do not do it. If you're dealing with these things, you need to correct those issues first. You need to look at your gut issues. You need to look at your estrogen. You need to look at your androgens and see where they are at, because most likely they're high if you have those symptoms. So taking Anavar, you are only making them higher, exacerbating these symptoms, okay? The way drugs are designed, though, you're probably still going to get some weight loss results, and then it's going to completely do a 180 on you, and you're going to be worse off, okay? Cannot stress that enough. We want the easy way out. I understand that, right? A lot of us don't have patience or want to put the effort forth or invest the time and money into what is required to correct these issues normally. So we jump on things like performance enhancing drugs, but they can be very, very dangerous when used improperly and not checking your labs. I cannot stress that enough, okay? And so now when we're talking low levels of androsterone, once again, refer back to your other symptoms or things like muscle loss and poor metabolism, because as mentioned, in women, it is heavily responsible for muscle building and metabolism. And you could have low levels because you are beta preference, so your androstenedione is feeding into your etocanolone. So that is why we test, okay? We test, right? It's sad to see people really mess themselves up. And sure, you might know a ton of people that have never messed themselves up. When it comes to these ones, do your Dutch test, know that you're safe, and to make sure that you are not going to cause yourself any issues. And when it comes to overproducing etocanolone, once again, genetic reasons for 5-beta pathway, but you could also be taking DHEA, as mentioned, not checking your androgens, and next thing you know, bam, chronic inflammation, autoimmune disease potential. So I actually have like a client, we got her blood work back, and her DHEA is low. And I put out a question or whatever for coaches out there. If you saw this as a coach, what would you do? No one got it right, unfortunately, but I know she is okay to supplement DHEA because we have ran a Dutch test. She has low androgens. She's also menopause. Menopause is, you're pretty much guaranteed to be low unless you have PCOS. So get your testing done. Do your labs, consult your doctor, consult me. It's not a sales plug. This is what I do, okay? Make sure you are safe to supplement these things if necessary, if this is something that you're dealing with low levels, okay? So that's it for the symptoms and the causes of these hormones. On the next video, we are going to get into a little bit on how to optimize them. So you guys are looking forward to that one. And if you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button and follow me on Instagram at that.coach.curtis.